I'm going to just say hello, Trojan fans, because I'm a little under the weather right now. And I'm like, if I do this, it's probably not going to go well. But I'm your host, Ryan Abraham, publisher of USCFootball.com. This is Peristyle Podcast. And I'm in a remote location, and I am also a little bit under the weather. But Connor and I wanted to do a show because there's a lot going on in the world of USC football. The transfer portal window to enter the portal closes tomorrow on Friday, January 16th. And we're going to talk about that and USC putting the final touches on its portal class, from what we understand, getting closer to a defensive coordinator hire, some polyball updates, a lot of stuff going on. We want to welcome in Connor, who's joining me remotely as well. What's up, Connor? How you doing, man?
Doing well. Of course, the second we start this, our sorry, I muted myself. Okay, geez, sorry, doing a million things at once because Matt Zenitz, our friend at CBS, just tweeted out that USC is expected to hire Mike Eckler from Nebraska to be the special teams coach. So I'm trying to get that story
Ah,
right now. Waiting to confirm that on USC side, but we have some breaking news here to start the show, Ryan.
breaking news. I love that. Well, it's breaking news. I'll have to pull up a picture of Mike Eckler, but USC fans might remember him as he was at USC before, I believe, as the linebacker coach. I think
Yeah, in
that's
2013, he was the linebacker coach, and I think there's a chance he'll be the linebacker coach at USC too. But I don't want to put the cart before the horse with that. He's definitely, if they hire him, which it sounds like Matt Zenitz isn't going to just post that unless he has that on good authority. It sounds like that's about to be a done deal. It'll at a minimum be the special teams coordinator, a full-time special teams coordinator. I think this is great news, Ryan. How many times over the years have we said USC should get a dedicated special teams coordinator? And it looks like they have one lined up here in Mike Eckler.
how they do. So that's good stuff. Like, right, we just want to go live with breaking news. We love it. That's how we roll here on the Peristyle Podcast. So we'll talk more about that too. That wasn't really part of the agenda, but here we are with that up to see. I'm sure I have some old pictures of Mike Eckler around, but we are live on YouTube. And if you are watching us live on YouTube, thank you for doing that. We could put your questions and comments up on the screen. I have a little smaller screen here, but I'll try to get to them. Questions. If you have questions, put a big question on there. Love to get to them. You can email us, podcast at uscfootball.com. You could also call or text us at 424-254-9141. Shoot us a text, leave us a voicemail, and we love 5-star reviews over on Apple or Spotify. And we love just hearing from you. Any way we can hear from you, we love doing that. And there people are active in the chat, and we love that as well. But yeah, so having Mike Eckler in there from Matt Zenitz, breaking news, there'd be interesting. And then we've heard recently, and like you said, it was 12 years ago, like 13 years ago, when 2013, when he was at USC. So pretty cool there.
It is pretty cool. As I'm just finishing, putting the finishing touches on this. Of course, literally the second we started, I didn't expect this to happen so fast. But like I said earlier, Ryan, and I'd love to get your take on it. It sounds like Ryan Doherty, the current special teams coordinator, is going to stay on and maybe just be an assistant. But we've talked a lot about this. How if you bring on a special teams coordinator and you designate one of those coveted full-time assistant roles to that job, you're probably going to get better special teams play because you're just getting a better person in the building. And so nothing against Ryan Doherty. Ryan Sayeri this year set the field goal record at USC. We've seen some nice things from USC special teams, but it has been an issue over the years. Some of the kick coverage stuff, just other examples, that the field goal block that wasn't against Oregon when Desmond Stevens jumped over the offensive lineman. We've just seen some mistakes this year, and anything can happen, but ideally you throw this kind of money and these kind of resources at a guy who's done this job for a long time, someone Nebraska really was hesitant to lose. I'm hearing Matt Rule is pissed that he's losing Mike Eckler. I think this is a really good step for USC.
I do too. And excuse me there, but I think I've been someone that's kind of harped on special teams for quite a while. If you've been following the site or following me, that's something I've talked about. And I got to talk with Ryan Doherty before the season, and liked what he had to say and everything. But you just have to look at the results. And sometimes teams are so good. Some of the Pete Carroll teams, they were really bad on special teams, and he was reluctant to hire a special teams coordinator, and I think it was Dennis Slutak. He hired him for like 2 years as like a GA, and their special teams got a lot better. But even back in like the Orange Bowl of the Iowa Orange Bowl, like 2020, 2003, I think it was. I mean, USC gave up like an opening kickoff for a touchdown, but it didn't matter then. I think it matters more now because you're just not dominating all the other aspects of things. You need to have solid special teams, and it just wasn't. It was not up to snuff this past year, and you just need to like look. You got to do something. There, you have to make some kind of changes. Like it was literally costing you games. The Oregon game, giving up that punt return for a touchdown, where you just get the momentum. You take the lead in the third quarter, and boom, it's flipped. You can't let stuff like that happen. So yeah, I think it's a big deal for him to be coming in here. And I know we were all talking about the defensive coordinator hire, but getting Mike Eckler, I think, is a good one for for Lincoln Riley and USC.
And again, I don't want to put the cart before the horse, but I do wonder what this means for the current staff, because Mike Eckler is going to come to be a full-time assistant. And so I know USC, with this new defensive coordinator hire, wants to keep as many of the defensive assistants as they can. You bring in Eckler, who's a full-time coach, someone is going to have to leave because they're already at the limit if USC hires an outside defensive coordinator hire. So let's say that we've heard a lot of the Gary Patterson stuff in recent days. That's a name that I continue to hear a lot about. I heard from a source today that USC and Patterson have had prolonged conversations. So let's say USC brings in Gary Patterson, who, by the way, is a Kansas State alum, the same as Mike Eckler. If they bring in Patterson, then you just have too many coaches because you're over the limit if you want to bring everyone back. So then maybe does Rob Ryan become an analyst and Eckler coaches the linebackers and does special teams, and then you can bring back Doug Belk and Eric Henderson and Sean Nua. That's a thought that I have, but we're going to just need to see how that plays out. But right now, they want to bring everyone back. They're adding a new assistant coach. It sounds like they're going to hire an outside defensive coordinator. That's one too many coaches.
Yeah. No, I agree with you there. We'll see. But like I said, the coaching rules are different now, too. It was before you had limitations of how many guys could actually coach on the field, and a lot of these analysts weren't supposed to, but they were coaching anyway. So, I mean, you could still keep guys on staff, and there are different roles. So we'll see what Eckler's role ends up being when USC announces this. Just wanted to get everyone. So I think we're not doing live calls. Wayne in the chat was asking what the phone number is. We're not going to do live calls for this one, but you can put your questions in the chat, and I will try to get to them. And people are asking if I was in Hawaii. I was in Hawaii for the Polynesian Bowl, but I came back on what day is today? Thursday. I came back on Wednesday and kind of got sick on the way back. But I had stuff I needed to do here, so I couldn't stay for the whole game. Unfortunately, the USC commitments came later, and I wasn't able to stay. That was the plan all along. So, but yeah, I'm back from Hawaii, but apparently I got sick on the plane or something coming back. But it was beautiful over there. I always love going. It's great. But we put some content up from some of the 2027 guys up at uscfootball.com. When we get into that, we're going to get into the defensive coordinator stuff. I want to thank our sponsor, Trader Joe's, because they've been awesome to us over the years, and we love talking about them. If you go over to traderjoes.com, check out some of their features, what's new. I do like, there's a couple Instagram accounts that kind of post new Trader Joe's stuff. There's stuff like every day that's going in and new, but the Kamate, I don't know if they say Gouda style cheese. I was looking at that. They pair it with some green apples and crackers and stuff on the website. That looked really good, so I wanted to check that out. I love doing like cheese plates and things like that over there at Trader Joe's. And they also have this beef and queso bowl, just all contained, and it looks awesome as well. So make sure you go over to traderjoes.com, get your favorite stuff, whatever you like. I like a lot of stuff over there. So, but yeah, we appreciate them. They've been a lot of fun. So make sure you go check out your local Trader Joe's. Mine is Hermosa Beach. Do you have one close to you?
Yeah, right on Ventura Boulevard up here in Studio City. So thank you to Trader Joe's, the longtime sponsor of this show. It's very hard to get that sponsorship, Ryan. So thank you to Trader Joe's.
Yeah. Walter says, I thought there was no limit on coaches. So the limit is, so there's limitations on recruiting. So you can only have, I think it's only 10 or something go on the road. But before, the big limitation was you could only have those 10, and they were the ones that could coach on the field. So you have that assistant analyst that's the linebacker guy. Like he couldn't be on the field, but they would all do that anyway. So they changed that rule. So yeah, the line between if you're like a real assistant coach or not is changed a little bit. So, but that was one of those things where it was a limitation of could you go on the field or not, and now you can.
And I would just add to, like, Ryan Daugherty was an analyst, and then because of that new rule that you mentioned, Ryan, he was elevated to the special teams coordinator job, and maybe he was the special teams coordinator before, but he was an analyst, and like he is making a good chunk of money, but like Mike Eckler here is not going to be making as much as USC's new defensive coordinator, but he's going to be making a huge chunk of change. Like the financial piece is a big part of this. And some schools will pay a bunch of coaches a lot of money, but like what we've seen at USC is they'll pay those full-time assistants, the ones who go on the road, like big salaries, and then the analysts will make less. And so Ryan Daugherty was making less than Mike Eckler is going to make. Eckler is going to be paid a big chunk of change. And this is a guy who has been a long time assistant coach who goes on the road. Like it's just a little bit different because while Ryan Daugherty had the special teams coordinator title, like he was kind of treated as an analyst. And now USC is changing how they are going to structure special teams, and Daugherty will stick around because he's more of an analyst. Eckler is more of that full-time assistant coach. I hope that makes sense.
No, that makes a lot of sense to me because, like, you're right. Like, when they like changed some of the walk-on rules and like walk-ons could come to training table and they eat with the regular players and stuff, it like, there was this line in the sand that they kind of blurred it a little bit. But I think people still knew like you were a walk-on. Like, I think you still know if you're like an analyst or not. And in this case, now you have one of the like real assistant coaches running special teams. And I'm not saying that was the problem, but there was a problem. Like the special teams just weren't good enough. And now you have an opportunity to make that better. I think if you have, one of your full-time assistants that's doing special teams, I think it can make a big difference because it cost USC games. It just has, and you can't let that happen. It's such a big part of what's going on with the team, and when it happens over and over again, and you got a real opportunity to beat like Oregon, and giving up that punt return is just like, come on, like you can't do stuff like that. There were so many special teams gaffes that you're just like, oh, really? Back even in the the Cotton Bowl where USC lost to Tulane, like fair catching the ball at the 2 or whatever it was. There were just so many. There was a lot of errors in that game, but special teams was one of them, and I think you got to get better there, and I think Eckler would do that. And I think the rule that we always have, Connor, is like, are Nebraska fans, are Nebraska coaches upset that he's gone? If they're like, crap, man, then that's a good hire. When USC hired Steve Sarkisian out of Washington, and the Washington people were like, all right, okay, cool, whatever. Then you're like, uh-oh, that's not a good sign. If they were like pulling their hair out, when USC hired Lincoln Riley, Oklahoma fans were really pissed off, but they're pulling their hair out. So they did not want to lose him, even though they were talking trash about him. And the good thing is that Nebraska people are, they didn't want to lose Mike Eckler.
No, they didn't. The fans didn't, and Matt Rule didn't. I got a text. I kind of mentioned this earlier, but I got a text that someone said Matt Rule is pissed that Mike Eckler is leaving. Because remember, Eckler was at Tennessee. You see the picture there. He was there for 4 years, and he's from Nebraska. And Nebraska bent over backwards to get this guy on their staff, and the hope was he would be there for multiple years. He ends up leaving after 1 year. What does that say about Matt Rule? Like, I don't think he liked that situation very much. He comes to USC. I imagine he's going to get a pay raise. He'll get a title bump, it sounds like, too. Like, you're only at a spot for 1 year after leaving Tennessee. You wanted out of there. So I don't think that really looks good on Nebraska by any means. And it's a huge win for USC. You're absolutely right. The fans are pissed that Eckler's leaving. Matt Rule is upset that this guy's leaving. And the USC fans and us have all been saying for years, wow, a dedicated special teams coach, that would really solve a lot of problems. And this guy not that I know a ton about dedicated special teams coaches out there, but I wrote an article like this guy's pretty good. What he did at Tennessee really stands out. He had a lot of really good returners. They did a lot in the punting game that was impressive. Nebraska last year, no blocked kicks allowed, no blocked punts allowed. They're just buttoned up. I think special teams was what Nebraska did best a year ago. And now you're getting this guy to coach USC and potentially the linebackers. I like that a lot.
I think it's a good move. And this was not like I said, we went live at 5. And again, apologize if you're joining late. A little under the weather today, but we wanted to bring you a show. And even though it's remote, we're going to have Connor here. If I wasn't sick, Connor was going to be here. We were going to do it live out I'm in the Palm Springs area right now. That would have been fun, but we just have to do it remote anyway. But yeah, that's just one of those things that we weren't expecting to talk about this much, but credit to Matt Zenitz for breaking this really right as we were going live. The coaching aspect we did want to talk about was USC's search for a defensive coordinator, which is not done yet. But I know, Connor, there was a name that you had heard and posted on the Peristyle, and I don't know, maybe like 11, 12-page thread popped out of that, like almost instantaneously. So I don't know if you want to kind of, share the latest of what you've heard.
Sure. I just continue to hear the name Gary Patterson and now Mike Eckler coming to USC. I said it earlier, Patterson was a Kansas State grad. Eckler's a Kansas State grad. I don't think Eckler, if he ends up coaching the linebackers too, is coming to USC without knowing who the defensive coordinator is. So that would maybe make you wonder what's taking so long. It sounds like USC wants to wait until the portal closes to announce this hire. So that way players can't leave, which you can think of that what you want. It's an interesting strategy, but I get it. You don't want guys to abandon ship if they potentially don't like this new coach. But the point is, Ryan, I'm just overwhelmingly hearing a lot about Gary Patterson. And I think the only way he isn't the guy is if the current assistants on defense who USC want to keep, if they really are not in favor of Patterson and threaten to leave or just threaten to just not have things go well if he's the hire, then I don't know what choice USC has. But two people today called me and said, look, if I was a betting man, I would bet on Patterson being the next defensive coordinator. There are people in that building who think it's going to be Patterson. It's not final, so I'm not sitting here saying he's 1,000% the guy, but people on our site always say, what's the latest you're hearing? You never give us any information. Well, this is the latest I'm hearing, and that's the information I'm giving you. Could it change? Yes, but overwhelmingly, I just continue to hear the name Gary Patterson for USC.
And it's funny. His name came up maybe a couple weeks ago,
and we scoffed at it.
But there was also, I know there were fans that were like, "That's terrible," and I was like, I mean, he was a really good defensive coach, and he was a head coach. I think it's one of those things where, I mean, you could say D'Anton Lynn was great. He was a 1-year DC. Like, this is a former, Power 5 head coach that. Seems like would do a pretty good job. He took an analyst role at Texas too, right? I think he came in there to help them out before. Yeah, but I mean, it seems like someone that has had really good defenses, and USC just needs someone that has really good defenses. So if you have a guy that was a head coach and he wants to come and coach your defense, it seems like a pretty good one for me.
So he didn't coach this past season, but in 2024, he was an analyst at Baylor. And then I think either in 2022 or 2023, he was a special assistant to Steve Sarkisian at Texas. So the knock on him, Ryan, is that he didn't adjust his defense to the spread offenses in the Big 12. And just at the end of his tenure at TCU, it wasn't pretty. And he was given the choice by the TCU administration. You can finish out the season, but you're not going to be back next year. And he said, well, screw that. I'm out of here. So he left halfway through, I think, 2021. And then he did not embrace the NIL era. And so, look, I can't sit here and say, like, what's going to happen. No one knows who or how Gary Patterson will do. But, like, the NIL concerns, USC has a general manager. They have a front office staff. Patterson's not the head coach. He can say he doesn't like NIL. He doesn't have to do any NIL. So I'm not really nervous about that part of it. And obviously he's going to adjust to what USC faces in the Big Ten. I do think playing a Big Ten schedule and playing the out-of-conference games that USC has next season lends itself to a guy who maybe wasn't great against these big spread offenses, but how many crazy spread offenses are you going to see in the Big Ten? It's a lot of ground and pound. It's a different style. So I think it could certainly work. The question I have is, in that building, who is aligned with this hire? Because the one thing that I've heard is like, I think if he comes in, I don't know if every assistant coach will be over the moon with that. Now, is that something that can be ironed out and things will just work out? Absolutely. But there are some resolutions that would need to happen. And that's a fascinating piece. It's very interesting what's going on at USC, Ryan, where you have Lincoln Riley, Chad Bowden, and Jen Cohen, three power players in that building, how they coexist, how they make these decisions. It's all very interesting. And I just continue to hear that Chad Bowden has a lot of power in there.
And I think that we heard something similar when the fired Texas DC Pete Kwiatkowski, his name was coming up, and it seemed like that was the logical way to go. And when you get a defensive coordinator that was fired but had top 20 defenses, he had a number 3 defense I think the year before. He had elite defenses. He knows defense, and heard the same kind of thing. It's like you got to work with everybody in the building, and it doesn't seem like it's just the coaches. It's also you have a general manager and a powerful athletic director. And I think they were on board with PK for coming in, but I think it was harder to get him to work with the regular assistants. This might be a similar thing where I'm not sure what the administration thinks of Gary Patterson, but trying to get him to fit in with everybody else, and if there's any power struggles and stuff going on, yeah, we'll see. But I think he's somebody that knows defense, and I think you want to do that. You could, we heard, Eric Henderson's name come up. He ended up calling the plays for USC's bowl game, and but he's not an experienced defensive play caller, and he's obviously been a great recruiter. And I think you have mixed results on the defensive line, but I think for USC, like you got to get this right. Like I don't know if you can hire someone that hasn't been an experienced defensive play caller, even like a Danton Lynn. Like that was a risk because he had 1 year of doing it. I think to me, you would need an experienced college defensive coordinator, and Gary Patterson, I think, would fit that bill.
And make no mistake, Eric Henderson really wanted this defensive coordinator job. He's already the co-defensive coordinator, has that title, but Danton Lynn was the full-on defensive coordinator, obviously. So him losing out to Gary Patterson potentially, what does the fallout of that look like? That is a question that I think we should be asking. And if Patterson ends up being the guy, we'll see. But all along, Ryan, we thought if Henderson or Doug Belk, whether they were going to be co-defensive coordinators or whether it was going to be Henderson as the full-time defensive coordinator, if that was the move USC was making, they would have done it by now. So
Yeah.
the fact that they haven't done that leads us to continue to believe it's going to be an outside candidate. But USC has emphasized that they want to keep the assistants, and keeping Henderson is really important because of the roster building that he's been a part of with that defensive line. And keeping Doug Belk, in my opinion, is really important because some of those defensive backs that he's brought in are going to be instrumental to what USC wants to do next year. So if it is Patterson or if it is an outside hire and Belk and Henderson wanted to become co-defensive coordinators or just don't really jive with whoever the next guy is, and one of those guys decides to go elsewhere, or maybe one of the new defensive coordinators ends up making a different hire and wants to bring in someone else. Like it's just very hard to bring in a defensive coordinator and have the same assistants. That's just not done a lot. And I understand why USC wants to do it because they want to keep all the players happy because those guys recruited all those players. But it's a very interesting tightrope that they're trying to walk. And like it could work, but you could also piss some people off in that building. And that kind of seems to be where things are trending right now. But like, I think one of the really important parts of Bowden and Jen and Riley is like these issues come up in a lot of places. And if you can piss some people off, but then get them back in the fold, that's really important. And I think USC might have to do some damage control potentially.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. With players and stuff, we had a comment in the chat. Whoever the DC is, the recruits still have to honor their NIL contract, and we saw that with Damon Williams at Washington, where he enters the portal and then realizes like, oh, there's some real financial repercussions if you get out of this contract, and ends up going back. where he wasn't wanted, because they were pissed that he was going to leave and all that. I think it depends on these contracts, and there's probably going to be legal, but I'm sure USC could lose some people, but a lot of guys have signed deals, and I think it's once they're signed, it's like, getting out of them. I think there could be some headaches there where, Devon Williams could have made more money somewhere else, but they realized like what it was going to cost to try to get out of a contract like that. So yeah, maybe you have guys stick around for a year, but they're upset and then they want to leave after that. But like you said, you have a chance to bring them back in the fold, even though if they're upset or initially if one of the assistant coaches that they were really close to ends up leaving.
And remember, this game of college football, it's all about what's doing best for you. We see players do that. We see coaches do that. And this is a worst case scenario example. I'm not saying this is going to happen, but say there's a defensive assistant who's frustrated at the hire and they choose to leave after the portal closes. What do the players in that coach's room who signed up to play for that coach for the year and have a relationship with that coach, got recruited by that coach, like what impact does that have on these players? They won't be able to enter the portal, but if someone really has their heart set on playing for a specific coach, I don't rule out a potential sit out from someone if it gets to that point. Again, things could be smoothed over and this could all not be something that happens. But I do think in a worst case scenario situation, if a defensive coordinator is brought in and that leads to a coach who USC wanted to keep, an assistant coach leaving, then a player is going to have a decision to make, and that's going to be fascinating to see what they make.
We had a comment from Bill. Let me put this up here. Ryan, not me, I think he's talking about Rob Ryan as head coach of defense.
Henny, I think,
not Jenny. I don't think he means Jen Cohen. I don't think she wants to be the DC. Henny is DC with Ryan in his ear on game day. A new forward idea for USC. The problem is that Rob Ryan's linebackers they were below, expectations this year. So do you want to promote that assistant that his group didn't do very well? I'm not saying it's his fault. I'm not, don't know, but the linebackers underperformed. And I think that was a real problem for this USC defense this year.
Totally agree. Say they lit the world on fire, I'd be okay with Rob Ryan and Eric Henderson as co-defensive coordinators, but that just wasn't the reality this year. So it's interesting because you look at what Oregon did. They lose their coordinators and they hire internally. I don't know about what their offense will look like, but defensively, like Dan Lanning oversees the defense. So I think you're kind of comfortable bringing in an internal defensive coordinator. But when Lincoln Riley's your head coach and he's Mr. Offense, this position is very important, even more important than it would be if he was a defensive coach, obviously. So that lends itself to you need to get the best possible person. And I kind of feel like Henderson and Ryan in a unique way, they didn't call the defense last season, but they kind of had a tryout last year, and it didn't really go that great. So I definitely see why there's an emphasis to hire externally. But like I said before, it's a very delicate balancing act, and it's going to be fascinating to see how it plays out.
I haven't dug into the Lanning promotions, but I saw that today. I think there's, some people said some good things, but it gave me kind of Pete Carroll vibes. Like, I think one of the underrated aspects of why Nick Saban was so great, obviously keeping that dynasty going, but when he lost like a Kirby Smart to go be the head coach of Georgia, he went and hired like another Kirby Smart. He went and hired somebody that was similar, that was going to go on and be a head coach. And he wasn't, like, he didn't try to create his tree. He hired the best people possible. Pete Carroll, like towards the end, he wanted to create his tree. Like, he wanted to promote from within and like create these coaches. And he did some, like, a guy like Ken Norton Jr. was a graduate assistant. He had never coached. And so, he ended up being like a DC in the NFL. But there were opportunities when he lost really good coaches, he promoted from within as opposed to going out and hire like the next great whatever, that someone that was great somewhere else. You're USC, you're already up at the top of the mountain. Go get Utah's guy or go get Iowa State's guy or whatever. He didn't really do that. And so I'm interested to see with Lanning because, two the coordinators, that's credit to him, move on to be head coaches. But promoting from within is definitely interesting. Maybe those guys were overqualified. I haven't dug into it much, but it gave me a little Pete Carroll vibe. Like, You can go out and go pay and go get the best DC or LSC out there if you really want.
I keep going back to the word fascinating because Rob Ryan was a very good NFL defensive coordinator a few years ago, however long ago it was. Like he has a ton of experience. And Eric Henderson is a guy who wants to be a defensive coordinator in the future. That's part of the reason he came to USC. He wants to make that jump. So USC did have some internal candidates who they could have hired. And Doug Belk is another guy who's been a defensive coordinator before. So he's someone who belongs in that mix. But for whatever reason, the administrators and Lincoln Riley, it seems like, are dead set on getting an external candidate. And I think that should be pretty telling. Like they've weighed the risks of hiring internally and hiring externally. And if you hire externally, you do run the risk of an assistant leaving because they've been passed up. And it's just that, like, I just am very excited to see how this all works. And if Gary Patterson's the guy and they retain everyone but Rob Ryan, I think that's the best case scenario for USC. If Patterson is the guy and that leads to a coach or two leaving, like what are the effects has on the program? What are the effects that has on the roster? What do the players do? Like that next step is something that, you know, we'll be all over, we'll be covering, but just the answers to those questions, I think will really have a big impact on next season.
Yeah, no, for sure, especially with players, relationships, and all that. And then it's up to like a Chad Bowden to like if players are upset that some guy leaves, then your general manager's got to keep them happy, whatever it is. Like that's part of their job. So yeah, we'll see. But it might be Gary Patterson and Mike Eckler helping with linebackers, and if they keep everyone else, that's great. But they might lose some guys, so we'll see. And obviously, like you said, that's the name you're hearing now, but it's not set in stone. But that's sort of where we are and stuff right now. Well, hold on, we got this is a comment on Oregon. So he was the okay. So Oregon DC was the DC at Tulane for Fritz, and he was there when USC played them on the Cotton Bowl. Yeah, so he's an experienced DC that just got promoted. So that's stuff like that. That's cool. I think USC did something similar where they were hiring like. You had Matt Entz be your linebacker coach, even though he was a head coach at the FCS level. Like a Doug Belk was a defensive coordinator before, so he has some experience doing that as well. Just Eric Henderson hadn't really done that, so I think that's one of those things. Can you afford to have a first-time DC as your permanent DC? I don't know if USC can afford to do that right now. Go ahead. Yeah.
No, I was just going to say I agree because I think if they had made the internal hire, that would have gotten a lot of the players excited and fired up. And I do think that could have spurred on some positive momentum. But then, say the Big Ten schedule comes out and you play Ohio State at home first or whatever, and they blow your doors off, then all that momentum goes away. Like I understand the calculated decisions that Bowden and Riley and Jen Cohen have to make. And again, they think going with an external candidate is what's best, and that seems to be the way they're going to do it. And then the effects of that will be the effects. So we'll see.
This is not a good comment that we got on YouTube. Let me put it up here. Oh, wait, sorry, the wrong one pulled up there. But let's talk about that disappointing transfer class. So we heard from Chad Bowden. He said it was going to be, major in high school recruiting and minor in the portal. And, it looks like USC finished up their class. They got a tight end from Wisconsin, Tucker Ashcraft. And so I feel like it's one of those situations that, they got some good pieces there, but it wasn't the blow it out of the water. Like we saw what Texas was doing and some of the other classes, but USC had the number one high school class. You brought in 35 guys. Like it would probably be hard to bring in a huge portal class too. But want to get your thoughts on the latest commitment, if they feel the portal's done and where USC stands and all that.
I do feel like they're done in the portal, and it's interesting, Ryan. It's something we've talked a lot about on the show where Bowden is entering his second season, and this is really the year that he can have a big impact on the roster as much as you can in 1 year. But with the portal and with high school recruiting, you can get your fingerprints on it more than he was able to last year. And so in some ways, this is year 2 of a rebuild, but then you have a very expensive head coach who's going into year 5 where we both feel like it's playoff or bust. But is it? Because you have a general manager who's in his second year, and say they go 9-3 and just miss out on the playoff again, but the young guys are a big part of it, and you can see some positive momentum. It's hard to make a really strong case to fire Riley. And I know people on this show will 5 years, no playoff, but like there's nuance to it. And it's just, it's very, and I just wonder, Ryan, what do you think? Like, say they go 9-3 and the freshman class is a big part of it, but they do miss out in the playoff. How do you evaluate where the program is? Because that to me would still be a step in the right direction. Although in 5 years not making the playoff, that's a huge problem too. It's kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't at that point. And I just another fascinating thing that they got to figure out.
Yeah, I mean, I went on record saying that it's playoff or bust, and I'm not going to, back off of that. I think you could have hit high school recruiting earlier in your 5-year tenure. You didn't have to wait till year 5 to go, hey, we're going to recruit Mater Dei and St. John Bosco and Corona Centennial and all that stuff. Like, you didn't have to do that. So I get it. I think the class I mean, there's a lot of really good pieces and you can build on it. And I think it can be, a cornerstone going forward of making this team better. But you don't have that luxury. Like, you need to this team needs to win now. And this is my assessment, not anyone. Like, if I'm the AD, if I'm calling the shots, it's like this is playoff or bust. Like, we've tried this. You've had some really bad years that you shouldn't have. There were some, bad hires, coaches that maybe stuck around too long, stubbornness, not doing what you needed to do in high school recruiting. It's all sort of like, now it's like, hey, no more excuses. Like, I don't know what else you could ask for if you're Lincoln Riley. Like, one of the highest paid coaches in the country. You have one of the highest paid staffs in the country. Your support staff is massive. Your NIL budget has been massive. Like, you've poured a ton of resources into making this team good. And the thing that's left is the team needs to be good. And we haven't seen that yet. So I think it's maybe they expand the playoffs too, but I think still, even with a 12 team, like, you're talking top, 3 or 4 in the Big Ten. I don't think that's too much to ask at this point. So I would say yes. Like, if the freshmen looked awesome and they're 9-3 and they don't make the playoffs, that's nice. But I still feel like the nice time's over. Like, this is time to win. And so, to me, the pressure's on Riley to go to the playoff this season, no matter what the schedule, especially with no Notre Dame on the schedule.
I think they were 4 in the Big Ten this year, right? The top 3 got in, and then they just missed it. But I get what you're saying. It's just a tough one for me. And we've talked about how David Woods makes the point the best time to fire your coach is when you first get that feeling that you should fire him. You don't want to be in this position. And if the money wasn't so crazy, he probably already would be gone. So they've done so much to try to build this up. But it's just interesting, Ryan, because say they do let him go, like, Curt Cignetti's not walking through that door. Can you realistically, in one offseason with a new coach, build a contender? I guess anything is possible. But to me, it just would seem easier if they keep recruiting at the level that they're recruiting at. They don't fall off next year. What's the best way to get into the playoff? Would it be ripping off the Band-Aid and starting fresh? Or if they do go 9-3 again, then all of a sudden you're 18-6 in the previous 2 seasons. You've seen some evidence, and then you kick the can down the road one more year, and that is your last gasp, 100% playoff or bust year. That to me makes a lot of sense, but I get why people listening are probably like, no, you got to get rid of this guy after 5 years of not making the playoffs. So another really unique part of it.
I mean, there could be situations like, if you negotiate with the agent and it's like, hey, it looked promising in 2026, but you just fell short. And then there's like, we could fire you now, or you could sign this where you make the playoff in 2027 and you stay. You don't, you forfeit the rest of your, buyout or whatever. Like, there could be something that you could I wouldn't
Yeah,
go
but he wouldn't do that because you're leaving money on the table. I get it. That would be great if they did that, but that's I don't think that's something that's realistic, right?
right. Yeah. No, but either you're going to be fired now or you can come, and if there's an ego thing where you're like, no, I want to come back and make this happen, there's stipulations there. And I don't know if that's something that's even possible, but I think you go back to David Woods. Um, the best time to fire a coach that needs to be fired is now. The next best time is tomorrow. Like the better time was yesterday. Like um, that's where we're kind of talking about there. Fun on Natty said, read your questions. If you put a question in the chat, I tried to star them so we can get back to them later. So I'm sorry, like on the smaller screen right here. And someone was asking about the microphone. I don't know. Hopefully, I'm trying to use this microphone, but I'm not sure if it's coming through the laptop or not. My apologies. But yes, I don't know why I guess like it's a long flight back from Hawaii. I think I just got sick along the way. That was not good. Okay. What else do we got? Oh, I was in Hawaii for like the Polynesian Bowl. Like I said, there was 5 USC signees. So the whole All-Star games, it's really changing how they're working now because it used to be like the seniors would show up there and they'd put hats on the table and who they're going to go to. Like now the players are not only just committed, they're already enrolled in school. So this year at the Poly Bowl, about a third of the players are juniors, 2027 guys. And so that's cool because you get to see, but they're still really early in their recruitment. And all of them are like, yeah, I mean, there's some guys that are committed, but a lot of them are just like, yeah, I'm looking at this school, this school. Like they're not, picking out when they're going to do visits or if they're going to go to junior days and things like that. But all the players it's not even like they're committed anymore. They're like literally on campus. And USC had 5 players that were committed to the game, and they didn't show up until last night. So they're going to do one practice today and then play in the game tomorrow. And we're going to see more of that, I think, with different schools. Now, some schools have really embraced it. They're like, yeah, go, that's okay. But you're paying these guys a lot of money to be on campus. You want them there taking classes, going through your workouts and stuff. So I think that's going to change. I think the trend is that a lot of these all-star games at the end of the calendar year or the beginning of the new calendar year will be juniors instead of seniors. So we're seeing the shift sort of happen there. So yeah, I was out there early on and stuff, but they're still cool events. But the recruiting calendars change things. Now we'll see if signing day gets moved to February. I know there's been some talk about that. I would love to see signing day get moved back to February. I don't like it where it is in December. Maybe that would change things a little bit. But right now, it's making these all-star games a little bit weird because you're seeing guys that are like enrolled in school now instead of anything else.
The time to do it is when they have that one in San Antonio that Chris just went to before all the guys enroll. But that big All America Bowl in Texas, that has, you can only have so many open dates. So it is tricky. The fact that the Poly Bowl is late after these guys are all on campus for the early enrollees, yeah, it makes it really hard. But glad you got to go out there, Ryan, and you did some really nice work interviewing 2027 guys. The fans on our site have really enjoyed those. I look at the page view numbers; they're really high, kind of surprisingly high. So, great job.
Yeah, thanks. But yeah, you get national guys, 2027 guys. You can see them in person and chat with them. And I put up some highlights from the first day of practice over there. Unfortunately, I had to come back. I would love to stay longer, but I couldn't do that this year. All right. Well, why don't we take a quick break? I don't have my soundboard or anything, but we'll come back and do the questions from the chat. And I think we got a couple of emails. So back in a minute, everyone. All right. We're back here on the Peristyle Podcast. I'm Ryan Abraham, joined alongside Connor Morrissette. As you can tell, probably, I am a little under the weather, but wanted to do this. And so we're here talking some USC football. We had the breaking news at the top of the show where Mike Eckler, according to Matt Dennis, is reporting that he'll be coming over from Nebraska, coach special teams. We're going to do some questions now. Jeff was not here. If you're in the chat and you want to put a question in there, I will try to put up on the screen. Sorry, I'm Trying to get through this. No voicemails from Curtis Marina Valley. I don't have my board here, so he might have sent a voicemail, but we'll have to do it next week. So I'm sorry we can't do voicemails and stuff because I'm not at home in the studio. So, but we did get an email. It was a rather long one from Stephen Poway, and this is one we haven't talked about yet as far as the portal goes. He said, I've read the headlines about Hassan Longstreet signing with LSU, leaving as USC's number one backup QB to become LSU's number one backup QB. I don't know if he will be. I wondered what we are teaching these young men these days. What does a quote school commitment mean in 2026? If you sign to play at University X and you're a good player, it's very likely you'll end up at University Y before you completed your freshman year. So, what do these high school commitments even mean these days? USC just signed the top recruiting class of 2026, but what does it even mean? That they'll have the highest number of students exiting the university through the quote porthole in January 2027. What kind of college experience are these young men having academically, socially? I never hear any discussion of program quote graduation rates anymore, or quote academically ineligible players, or even performance enhancing drug violations. Does that mean that they're just not testing anymore or checking transcripts? How do they even keep track in this topsy-turvy world? Does that mean in a world of $6 million player contracts that college, academics, loyalty, and clean programs no longer matter? If so, what in the world happened? P.S. With so much change on rosters nowadays, can USC finally put last names on their football jerseys? Seriously, I used to know all the players' numbers by heart. Now I have absolutely no clue, and I'm a serious follower of the team. Thanks, Steve and Poway. Wow, there was a lot there.
A lot to unpack. Not sure about the performance enhancing drugs thing.
I think they still
But
test for stuff,
yeah, yeah. But
I
so
would
with
think.
Longstreet, I'm going to have something in the war room on this, but I've also reported it on the Peristyle this week. By the way, if you're not on the Peristyle, Mike Eckler, that was a Gerard Martinez special. He heard about that first. I know Fight On Rusty, big USC fan as well, had heard the same thing. And so actually, I think Rusty's came first, but Gerard had heard Mike Eckler's name even before that, put it on the Peristyle, the Gary Patterson stuff, just stuff with Longstreet. If you want the inside scoop about USC, no better place to be. But anyway, so with Longstreet, a few things happened. So to come to USC, he left some money on the table. A&M would have paid him more. And fine. So he makes that decision, wants to learn from Lincoln Riley, didn't need to be the big money. He goes to renegotiate with USC this year. And Ryan, I'll just say it. Jaden Maiava is not making as much as a lot of these other quarterbacks. And so that kind of skews Hassan Longstreet's I guess value to USC, where they're not going to pay him the same amount as the starter. And so the offer for Longstreet was lower than he could have gotten elsewhere to begin with. Maiava coming back means that he's going to have to sit. So then the Longstreet camp was just like, all right, well, if we're sitting and we're not going to make that much money anyway, and we didn't really like how the coaching staff told us we'd play in the Alamo Bowl, then he didn't. Like, there were a lot of factors as to why he ended up leaving. And so he's getting paid a lot at LSU. They felt like Lane Kiffin's job security was better than Lincoln Riley's. And what was the other reason? Oh, yeah, the Longstreets are from Louisiana, so it's a homecoming for Hassan. That's a big part of it. Now, if I was making that decision, like, would you want to stick with Lincoln Riley and just reap the rewards of what it is that he's done with all the quarterbacks? Yes, I get it. But I also get the other side of it with Longstreet, where he just didn't feel like he was valued the way that he would be elsewhere. And so, yeah, he's got to sit at LSU again, but he's getting paid a hell of a lot of money to do that. So there's a lot more layers to it than just, Lincoln Riley passed on him and he doesn't think he's any good. Like, just because he left USC all of a sudden doesn't mean he stinks. He's going to be a good quarterback, I think, and it's just not going to be in the Cardinal and gold. But I wouldn't really get bent out of shape about it. This is just the way it goes. You got Jaden Maiava, and then Jonas Williams. He'll be the backup this year and hopefully take over the year after that. Like, no harm, no foul. I don't think it makes sense to pay a backup quarterback a ton of money like LSU's doing. If you got all that money, great, but I think USC is trying to operate a little bit differently, and I kind of think it's a win-win for all involved.
No, I agree with you. And the situation is like the most important thing is you have Jaden Maiava back. Like you have your
Yeah,
starting quarterback who was like one of the top QBR guys in the country, you have him back on the roster. Like all these other teams are like trying to figure stuff out. Like what can we do? We're going to go get this guy. Even at LSU, now you see like Dylan Raiola transfer to Oregon. He leaves a starting role at Nebraska, and then Dante Moore stays. He's staying there. That's a weird situation. Longstreet's going into pretty much, with Lane Kiffin, there's some craziness going on over there. It's not, I mean, he's not getting fired because he just got hired, but it's not the most stable situation. They bring in Sam Levitt, and they also brought in like the guy from Elon, right? Landon Clark. Yeah. So there's three. I think they tweeted out like we have the best quarterback room in the country.
It's pretty good.
And there's three guys. They have three guys. Like there was two at USC, and then you're gonna have the freshmen and stuff coming in. But like, as far, and I've seen people tweet about this as well. There are situations where guys are listening to agents, taking more money, and not there's real agents, and then there's like your uncle that's trying to make a name for himself or whatever. There's a lot of that going on. But they're leaving situations to go to a place where they're not even going to be the starter, and like you were in a better place where you were. And so just because you can leave doesn't mean you should. I'm not saying this might be better for all parties. I think for USC, rather keep him around and develop him and all that. But I think for the reasons that you said, Connor, like that, it makes sense that why he wasn't going to be sticking around.
What would you do if you could double your pay, but you had to sit at either school, and Lincoln Riley's at one? Lane Kiffin is a damn good quarterback developer, right? Not as good as Lincoln Riley, it seems like, but still a very good offensive coach. Like, I get it. I think if those were the two options, like, it's not like this guy's going to, like, with all due respect to Cincinnati, like, like maybe that's a bad example. Sorsby had a nice year and ended up going elsewhere, but he's not going to like a Northwestern for a defensive coach. Like, he's going to a pretty good situation in its own right, and he's getting paid, I think, double what he would have made at USC. Like, I get it.
Yeah, no, I think I think the interesting thing that you mentioned was like we've seen like Damon Williams. Like when I heard what he was making at Washington and he wanted to go into the portal, and you're like, what? What are you doing? He was making $4 million there. Was going to go into the portal. I don't think Jade Mobb is making that much, and I think he's a much more accomplished quarterback than Damon Williams is. So that's like that's a really interesting situation that USC's got. Not only their starter back, but they got him at, excuse me, it's really cold bothering me. They got him at a discount, which is like, that's kind of nice, if you're, it's like you have the Broncos were in a lot of trouble when they had to pay Russell Wilson all that money and it was dead cap space. And then they get, Bo Nix. And then once you get a quarterback, like a rookie quarterback that can play, you're in Fat City for a while, and then you got to pay him money and then his first contract, and things get a lot harder. But in the beginning, that's pretty cool. You get a good discount there. And USC's getting, an experienced quarterback in college, but they're getting him at a discount right now.
I can see the comments now. If we're not paying the quarterback so much, why didn't they add more guys from the portal? But a lot of money went into that 2026 class.
Like
let's just say that. Yeah.
Ton of money. All right, let's do some questions from the chat. Connor, do you think USC is fully invested in next season with their lack of attacking the portal for obvious needs? That's from Joey.
Well, again, this question has a lot of nuance. Like, I do think they're fully invested, but they're playing the long game with Bowden. Like, Bowden, when he was brought in, when he pitched Jen Cohen, he said, I'm going to recruit high school really hard, and I'm going to supplement from the portal. And that's exactly what he's doing. And I'd argue that he's doing a good job of that. He's doing what he said he would do. That, to me, is going all in. But, like, I know you look at what other teams do in the portal, and they are going all in, just adding crazy portal guys, like a Texas Tech, like Oregon, to a lesser extent. It just depends on what you see as being all in. For Chad Bowden's strategy, USC is all in. Is that the right all in strategy? We'll have to see. I get it. Indiana has all these great portal guys. Everyone's so old. They're about to win the national title, it looks like. So I think it's fair to second guess the strategy, but I wouldn't have questions if USC is all in or not. They're paying their head coach a huge amount of money. Their pool of assistant coaches, especially with this Eckler hire, is massive. The NIL for all these players is huge. They spent a ton for the 2026 class. There's the new football facility. Like, they are totally going for it. It might just not be the way that you would want them to totally go for it. And what do we keep saying, Ryan? That's going to be fascinating to see what happens. What happens with this new defensive coordinator? What happens if Lincoln Riley underachieves again next season? What happens with how this strategy is going to be put into effect? Like, those are probably the three biggest questions facing the team in the offseason, and now we'll just have to wait and see.
We will. And the good thing is USC does have a plan. They've invested into it. This isn't like before where they were like, I don't know if we should do this NIL thing. Like, they're putting money everywhere. So will the plan work? I don't know. But they at least have a plan, and they're backing it up. They're not, here's what we want to do. They're spending money. They're playing the game, and we'll see what kind of results we get. Fight on Natties. I don't know if this is he's not super happy, Connor, but why did USC sign a cornerback with a bum knee, a midget linebacker, and an edge rusher on Social Security from the portal? Wasn't there better options available?
To be fair, I think the cornerback was the number one ranked cornerback. Yes, he tore his ACL in week 5 and will miss spring practice, but last time I checked, number one's pretty good, right? So I like that addition a lot, personally. And yeah, I get the linebacker question, but it's clear that they have a lot of trust in Desmond Stevens and they think he'll take a leap. So fans can disagree, and boy, have they disagreed, but that's the thinking with that. And then the edge rusher, yeah, Fisher, I'm not totally blown away with him either. I get it, but I actually had a conversation with someone at USC, I think about a week ago, and just trying to get some information on the strategy. And you'll roll your eyes a little bit, but they really prioritize culture with these transfer portal additions, and with the 2026 class, they really feel like they're building a very unique culture. And we talked about how a lot of the guys opted out of the bowl game, Ryan. What does that say about the culture? So we'll see if USC plays in a bowl game and they have a bunch of opt-outs next year. Maybe that culture isn't great, but they're trying to win that way, where, of course, you need great players and great coaches and all that stuff too, but they're really trying to prioritize the right people. And if it doesn't work out, we'll be the first to come on the show and say, hey, they made the wrong choice. But I'm not in a position right now to say, oh, they're totally screwed. I actually think next year, 9-3, it would probably be my pick right now. I'd give them a shot to go 10-2, and anything less than that, I'd be disappointed. But I'm kind of more worried about the internal makeup of what's going on in that building more so than how the roster is constructed, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think the linebacker coach, matters. I think I felt like Eds was going to do great. He did. I felt like Rob Ryan was going to do great. And I mean, the results weren't there. And I'm, not sure exactly where that's from, but I think, if you have Eckler in there in the mix, then maybe that's going to help out, no matter who the personnel is. But speaking of this, the Scourge says knee-jerk record predictions for next season. I'm thinking 8-4 or 9-3.
Well, assuming they're going to schedule a cupcake for that last game, whether it's Cal or Stanford or a group of 5 team, I think Stanford would qualify as a cupcake. Cal in year 1 of a new coach, probably still better than a lot of other teams USC could potentially schedule. But either way, they should beat any of those teams. So you got Fresno State, Louisiana, someone else. At Indiana will be tough. At Penn State, I think, will be tough, even though it's a new regime. At Rutgers, they should win. At UCLA, you hope they win. Maryland at home, you hope they win. And then Ohio State, Oregon, Washington, at Wisconsin. Yeah, I continue to go back to 9-3 with that tough schedule, especially with Damon Williams being back at Washington. That makes that game a little tougher. But the games that realistically USC will be underdogs in, at Indiana, and then they're at home against Ohio State and Oregon, but I could see them being slight underdogs in those games too. So it's good they got those teams at home, though. That makes me think there is a chance of 10-2, but I go back to 9-3 would be my pick right now.
We got a couple 7-5s in the chat. It's your pick and stuff. I would go 9-3 as well, but I don't think that's good. I think you have to make the college football play. So it's about winning some of those games that maybe you're not expected to. This year you just had to beat Illinois, and they weren't able to do it to get to 10-2. All right, we got one last one that I saw in the chat from Big E. How much does the USC defensive scheme matter to who they hire? Presumably, you have to have the right players to fit the scheme.
I think it does matter a lot because they're trying to retain all of the position coaches who've recruited for that specific scheme under Lynn. So bringing in, if it is Patterson, a guy who trademarked a unique version of that 4-2-5 defense with a versatile nickel back. I know most teams are playing that 4-2-5 right now, but I do think when Patterson speaks to Lincoln Riley and Cohen and Bowden and all that, like he's selling himself on my scheme. I can make it work with the players that Danton Lynn brought in, that you guys brought in, that you guys have. Like, I do think that's, of course, a big part of it.
Yeah. I mean, if your scheme is so like when we saw Alex Grinch, like you need like really small Hercules Mataafa kind of guys in the middle of the defensive line, like that's kind of screwed up. Like you need good players, and then your scheme will work. Like you can move guys around and and make it work. I didn't like that Kamari Ramsey was playing out of position this year. I think that was something that hey, you got to figure out. Like he's a great player. Put him in his natural position and let him cook, and then figure out what you want around him. But I think the better schemes you can. If you have good players, you find ways to make it work and adjust to what you have. If you're like, yeah, it'll be 2 more years till we get the right players in here to run my scheme, then I don't think you're running the right scheme.
I agree. There's no time to waste with that.
Yeah. All right. Well, the chat was really active. My nose was really active. So I think we're gonna have to like cut this off. We went an hour. That's pretty good. Again, sorry if the audio didn't sound the best. Remote here in my kitchen, out in the desert. But yes, be back in studio next week. Hopefully, feeling a lot better, and hopefully be able to talk about the real hires, and we'll hear from USC and their press releases and all that of the staff is filled out and the portal closing and all of that. Anything else you want to add, Connor, before we go?
Feel better, first of all, and second of all, what great timing where we start the show and USC is likely to hire a new special teams coach. So people all the time want the instant reaction to stuff. Well, couldn't have gotten any more instant than that. So glad that timing worked out.
Literally was tweeted as we were going live. So I was like trying to do the intro and Connor's like,
yeah, sorry about that. I was probably
okay.
Messing you up. Should have muted myself.
No, that's okay because we had breaking news, so it makes sense.
We did.
All right. Well, hope you guys enjoyed it. That's Connor. I'm Ryan. We do the Peristyle Podcast each and every week talking USC Trojan football. Make sure you check out USCfootball.com for all of the great content. Hope you enjoyed the show, and we will talk to you next time.